Hello, this is the Range Rover Doctor. Today we're going to be talking about the cooling system of the Land Rover Range Rover series. This is a very interesting topic, and a lot of people always want to know, why did my cooling system damage my engine? Today we're going to talk about that, and I'll let you know why. So when we talk about the cooling system of your engine, we're not talking about the cabin. We're not talking about reducing the temperature of your cabin, which is the air conditioner. We're talking about cooling down the internal components of your engine. Your engine gets very hot during operation, and you have water coming in via the water pump through the chambers of your engine and back to the radiator here, which gets cooled by the cooling fan, and then gets pulled back into the engine in a water cycle to cool down the engine again. So the hot water here mixed with coolant goes to the radiator, which in turn gets cooled by the cooling fan, and then back to the engine. So it forms what we call the cooling cycle. For this discussion, we'll be talking pretty much about the V6 and V8 engines. In the 2014 to 2022, we will not be talking about the older engines from 2005 to 2009 thereabout, because they're sturdier, they're stronger, but they do get affected too. This is the V8 5.0 normally aspirated engine. When we say normally aspirated, it means air goes inside the engine normally. There's no turbo and there's no supercharged. This engine was installed in all Land Rover V8 engines after 2010. Before this, we had the 4.4 V8 engine, same V8, but that was installed in the LR3 and the older Sport. So for the LR4 and the newer Sport versions from 2010, the V8 installed was this same engine. And this same engine is installed in the big body before the L405. So all 2009 big bodies, the L322, the Range Rover had this engine installed. This is the V8 supercharged 5.0 engine. So the supercharger on top of it, this unit you see here, actually raised the power of this engine from 375 bhp thereabout to 510. So the Land Rovers that had V8 engines shipped after 2013 came with this engine with the 8 cylinders. In 2014, Land Rover actually cut out 2 cylinders from the V8 and made the V6. So this is the V6 supercharged, pretty much the same thing, but with 2 cylinders clipped off for fuel economy and better performance than the older V8 engines, although some people tend to doubt that. We'll actually check that out from real-time test, but on paper this engine has much bhp and better fuel economy than the older V8 engines. This is the same V8 5.0 supercharged engine with the supercharger taken off, and we will be discussing this engine and the cooling system of this engine, because it is basically the same engine from the V8 2010 till the 2022, when we now had the BMW V8 M63 installed in the L460 and the Sport variant. So when we talk about coolant, we're not talking about a special fluid. It's actually a mixture of water, and a radiator mix. The radiator mix actually helps in keeping the temperature down and lubricating the seals, and in very cold region helps the coolant from freezing up when the temperature is very cold. This is the water pump for the engines I just described. I call it the heart of the Land Rover engine because this is crucial. Pretty much looks like the human heart too. So this is the same water pump here installed on the engine block. So the water pump pulls water from the radiator into the engine block and the header units, and the same force pumps the hot water after it's cooled down the block back into the radiator, where it gets cooled by the fan. And you have a thermostat here that controls the rate of flow. It opens up when the engine is hot. You also have a myriad of hoses that cools down other stuffs like the throttle body and the supercharger on top of this engine. So here is how it happens. The early versions of this water pump was plagued with failure. We had a lot of shaft seal failure and bearing failure, which led to coolant loss. This is how the water pump sits on the block. Now, this is the engine internals. You have the top cylinder on top of this and the gasket in between. And coolant goes through these passages. You also have oil going through the passage as well for lubrication and for cooling down the block. The cylinder walls of the V8 and V6 have become thinner because of weight loss and performance. Now, this is what happens. When in operation, this cylinder gets very, very hot. They all get very hot, but you have the coolant sipping in between to cool them. And when you have coolant loss, you have air gaps in. There's no more coolant here to take away the heat from this part of the cylinder or wherever you find the air gap, and that part heats up and expands the air too around it, and the air pushes out all the coolant, and you find out that you experience overheating. When the engine starts to overheat and you don't stop immediately, this particular part or every part of the engine heats up and warps through expansion and contraction because it's not being cooled down effectively. It expands, and when you stop, it cools down too fast because there's no coolant in it, and you now have a cylinder warp. So the walls here might become bent, and because the gasket lays on top of it, it stretches more than the gasket, and you have gasket damage, and you can have oil seeping into the water part or water seeping into the oil, or you have the combustion itself pushing through the gasket through your water system and bubbling out of your expansion tank. So most of the time when your car has overheated and they say the gasket is bad, that's what happens. It actually just pushes out the whole expansion, the water out of the expansion tank. Now here's the problem. If you've had expansion, means the cylinder walls or the heads are not straight anymore. So replacing the gasket might not just fix it. So most of the time when you just replace the gasket, you find out that you still have the same problem. It's still overheating, and you might have to go to a professional to check the engines for you for uniformity, or to have it honed, or to have it surfaced to maintain that clean surface again for you to be able to install your gaskets. This engine also has lots of plastics installed, thermal plastic installed for weight loss too, for water flow, and also cooling for the components. So when you have coolant loss, most of the plastic and the seals can also fail, and you have water leakage from every part. It can come from any part. It can also come from the expansion tank due to the pressure from the hot air in the system. When you get the low coolant warning sign, you must come out to inspect your coolant. You are coming to check the expansion tank, which is this tank by the right hand side. It might be a little bit difficult to check, so you have to bend in a little bit. The level of water in the cooling system can be very confusing. The expansion tank actually has the maximum and the minimum marks on it, but it is not visible. I'll show you. If you come to the back of your expansion tank and you look down, it's going to be inscribed somewhere there. I'll show you from this other bottle. This is the position of the expansion tank in your car. This is the orientation of the expansion tank in the car. And this is the maximum sign, while this is the minimum sign here. With this inside the vehicle, it is quite difficult to get a view of those marks. Like I always say, the cooling system of the Land Rover is the heart of the Land Rover, is the blood of the Land Rover. At the same time, is the Achilles heel of the Land Rover. If you take care of the cooling system of your Land Rover V8 5.0, 3.0 V6 engine will last forever. Yes. Nothing lasts forever, but it will last for a very, very long time. The very first precaution to take is to make sure you check your expansion tank every time you get that low coolant sign. Do not take it lightly. Come out, pop up your hood, your bonnet, open your bonnet, and check the expansion tank. Your coolant, pink clear coolant, shouldn't be contaminated. You have black stuffs in it, means there's a problem. If you have brown stuff in it, means there's a problem. If it's plain white, means you had too much water in it or it's been leaking. If you did not buy the car from the dealership, or if it's not new, means there's something wrong. You've had a problem with the cooling system before. Should be here, the maximum mark, or here. If it's cold, should be somewhere here, and when the engine is on, it comes up here. It could be somewhere around here, and that's still pretty safe. You just need to top it up when you have that low coolant sign. If it's here, you might just need to top it up when you have the low coolant sign. But if it's somewhere around here, it means there's a problem. So you can actually top it up once, and it's okay. If you get a coolant sign within a week, anytime within a week there's a problem, have it checked by a mechanic, and make sure you use the proper coolant. It's the pink to red coolant. I will put the description and the specifications of the coolant below this video. And make sure you use a competent mechanic. Again, I would say that do not use the fix one break five mechanic. And make it a habit every Saturday or once a month. Pop up your bonnet, pop up your hood, check your cooling system, check for leaks. If you have traces of leaks from anywhere in your vehicle, take it to a proper mechanic to have it checked, have your coolant system pressurized, checked for leaks, and you will not have a problem with your Land Rover engine. Range Rover Doctor, has been an awesome evening with you guys. See you on the next episode.